Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraah Sthirairangai Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuh Swasti na Indro Vriddhasravaah Swasti na Pusha Visvavedaah Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. When there is a vacuum in life, when there is a feeling of smallness, being disconnected, a person seeks to fill up that vacuum through whatever means that person understands and whatever means are available. And that filling up leads to all kinds of addiction. And the most fundamental addiction in life is seeking sensory pleasures to fill up that vacuum, to fill up that gap, to fill up that smallness. And this is the most fundamental one. It is everywhere. Everyone has it. The vision of the Vedas is that yes, you can fill up that vacuum by fulfilling your desires through sense pleasures or something similar. But that is not going to solve your problem. The problem will keep coming back. You will get fatigued, bored by your pursuits, and that inner vacuum will keep on nagging you. That inner gap, that inner emptiness will keep on disturbing you. And it might lead you towards going against the dharma. We saw in the last few classes Arjuna's question, Atha kena prayuktoyam papam charati purusha. Impelled by whom or what a person is dragged into papam. Papam means going against the dharma. In English they call it sin, but I keep it papam. So, what impels a person knowingly, unknowingly, we are not even talking, knowingly going against dharma, doing things which a person knows is detrimental to one's life. So, what impels that person? What is that where the person feels helpless? And then Bhagavan says, Lord Krishna says, Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajo Guna Samudbhava. It is those desires, and then the anger born out of the desires, non-fulfillment of the desires. And which type of desires? Desires which are not in keeping with the dharma, which are opposed to the dharma. And those desires which are opposed to the dharma create all kinds of problems. So, the solution is not to have a disdain towards the desires as such, but to look into the root cause of it. And there, Lord Krishna gives a hint. He says, when one has the vision of oneself, what kind of self? That which is beyond the senses, the manas, the mind, or that faculty of mind which looks at options, which makes choices. Then buddhi. Buddhi is that faculty of mind which is a policy maker, which tells what is right, what is wrong, according to one's capacity, and then directs the manas to make the functional decisions. So beyond the manas, the mind, beyond the buddhi, the intellect, that which is there, and that is real you. And that is not limited by mind, intellect, senses, or the body. Here in those shlokas, the last 2 or 3 shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita, we'll just quickly look at them. Indriyani Paranyahu, that 42nd shloka. It's not visible. Is it visible? Make it. Sharing the screen. Oh, I have to change this. I think now it can be shared. Is it visible? No. No problem. Share screen. Done. Okay. Indriyani paranya. Indriyebhyah param manah. Manasastu para buddhi. Yo buddhehe parasastu saha. Evam buddhehe param buddhva. Sanstabhya atmana atmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabahu kamarupam durasanam. So he gives us the basic method of how to conquer those desires which I know are detrimental to my life. And he says, just by lecturing, just by talking, it's not going to happen. One has to see the whole progression, how it is happening, how the command and control structure is working without my knowing. So here in these two shlokas, he has not taken the gross body, because the progression is the gross body, then the subtle body. Gross body is the Annamaya. Subtle body is the Pranamaya. So Pranamaya is more powerful or is more pervasive, and it controls the gross body. So the gross body part is ignored here. He straight away goes into Indriyani. Indriyani, in the sense organs, are part of the subtle body, which is the Pranamaya kosha. And then subtler than Pranamaya is the Manomaya, the mind, because the mind is subtler than the sense organs. Mind controls the sense organs. And subtler than the Manas, the mind, is the Buddhi. Buddhi we loosely translate as intellect. So intellect is subtler than the mind, and the intellect controls the mind. Then there is something more subtle than the intellect, and that is the truth, and that is you. And once I have that vision, that you is not located within this body, it is all pervasive. And the more I understand that nature of myself, that inner emptiness, it withers away gradually. And when that withers away, then it is easy to conquer those desires which are detrimental to my life, which I know I should not be doing. I have, but I am in a dilemma, or sometimes I'm not even in a dilemma. I'm sure I should not be doing, yet I just do it. Or I'm sure I should be doing, yet I don't do it. So that helplessness is because of the overpowering force of those desires arising out of my inner emptiness. And that emptiness has to be filled. So-called has to be filled. In the sense, it is already, it is out of ignorance. The emptiness is not there. But it appears to be there. And that has to be removed by the knowledge that I am not empty. And reorienting myself to this new discovery becomes the whole life process. The whole life and all its activities, they become a sadhana. Sadhana means a pursuit towards a goal. And that goal is to discover my fullness, the inner fullness. And the whole third chapter describes how different activities of life can become one's spiritual pursuit. Spiritual pursuit need not be a special activity. Maybe one can add few activities, but need not be exclusively some special activities where when you are spiritual, and then at other times you are mundane or doing trivial things. No, the whole life, every moment of life can become spiritual, provided we make some changes in our attitude, our way of looking at things, and of course, fine-tuning some of our activities. They should be aligned with the dharma. That is the fine-tuning. And once they are aligned to the dharma, one can make few adjustments in one's attitude. And what are those adjustments? That at least some of the activities which I do, which are in keeping with dharma, which are aligned with dharma, righteousness. It's more than righteousness. We have already discussed that. Which are in keeping with dharma, and in which I am not the beneficiary. At least a few of them, if not all of them. So that becomes a sadhana. And that sadhana leads one to that inner leisure, that inner restlessness is settled, and mind is open to the fact that I could be a whole. I'm not a limited person, limited to this body. But I could be much bigger than that. Maybe I am the whole entire universe, or the truth of the universe. And that me pervades everything and yet is above everything. Just like the gold, when I enter a jewelry shop, the gold in all the jewelry, the gold pervades all the jewelry, and yet it stands out. It is separate from all of them, because a jeweler does the valuation of the product by the quantity of the gold and not by the design in which the gold is formed. So gold is pervading everything, all the jewelry, and gold stands out separate. Similarly, the vision of the Vedas is that your essential swarupa, your nature, the essential nature of yours pervades everything. And yet, it is untouched by everything. It is above everything. So that way, evam buddhehe param buddhva, that which is higher or above even the buddhi, So if it is higher than the buddhi, that means it is higher than everything else. Okay? Higher in the sense it is all pervasive, it is untouched, and because of which the other things function. So that kind of a vision strikes at the basic problem, the root cause, the basic root, the root cause of the problem, that emptiness, which leads to all kinds of addiction. And the most basic addiction is the addiction of fulfillment of one's desires, and especially those desires which are not aligned with the dharma. Desires which are aligned with the dharma, we are not even talking here. That's not the point of discussion. Okay? If I desire something and that is good for me, for example, I desire that I should have good health, and for that I desire food which is right for me, lifestyle which is right for me. I get up in the morning, do some exercises. I have a desire to do exercises regularly. I have a desire to eat healthy food. We don't have any problem with that. The problem is I desire something which is not good for me. And even worse, I desire something which is not good for me, and I know about it. I very well know about it, and yet can't do anything. That is a worst kind of helplessness. So that problem is addressed at two levels. One is one forcefully curbs that desire immediately, and then followed by that reflection in which one dwells upon that vision where my true nature is described, going through a series of processes. And there we have the process of Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, etc. So that is how one curbs the desires and doesn't allow those curbed desires to remain suppressed and become explosive at a later stage. How? By immediately following it up with a certain process in which a higher vision, a higher, I will call a so-called addiction is available. That's the trick. In any de-addiction center or rehabilitation center, they not only stop the wrong habits or curb the addiction, they not only do that, they immediately supply that person with something better, something bigger, something to look forward to, and which is good for that person. So the person starts reorienting, readjusting towards, gets a taste of something which is good for that person, and starts leaving or losing interest in things to which he or she was addicted and which was not good for that person. And that's how things are. Even if a person is an alcoholic or a drug addict, how do you do? How do you manage? You start curbing, reducing the dosage of those drugs or the alcohol, and engage that person in other kinds of food, other kinds of activities, so that the person develops interest in something more healthy. And once the person gets addicted to something more healthy, the de-addiction of something which was less healthy, the drugs or the alcohol or whatever, it happens automatically and it sustains. And the person changes. And there again, the company in which that person remains, at least for initial few months or a couple of years, is also important. If the person goes back into the company of the same old group of people who were addicted, then the rehabilitation doesn't happen. So how does it work? The company has to change. And that is where we call satsanga. The sangha is changed. You move from one ecosystem, addiction or addiction glorifying ecosystem, to some other de-addiction glorifying ecosystem. So with whom do you interact much, in which ecosystem you live, that also helps one to come out of this addiction. So it becomes a process. So even a addiction of a gross thing like drugs requires so much of process. Then what to say about addiction to basic desires of life, which are not good for me? Of course, it requires the whole process. And that process is discussed, described in the Bhagavad Gita, starting with, in this chapter, how to fine-tune one's activities, how to fine-tune one's attitude towards those activities, how to bring the Almighty in one's life. All of them becomes part of the spiritual process. And that can also be religious, to make one follow those activities religiously. So religion is not something, a hated word. Religion is the practice of spirituality in a disciplined way. That is religion. And that should be the definition of religion. Any other definition becomes a problem. Yes, even I know any other kind of definition of religion can become a problem. And luckily, we have the word dharma, which is a comprehensive word. It includes the spiritual practices, and it also includes that motivation to follow it religiously, in a disciplined way. All of it, one comprehensive word, dharma. So we don't have to split it and say, these are spiritual practices, these are religious practices. That is because our understanding is clouded, because we are conditioned in a certain way to look at things. And that's how we say, I discard religion, and then I take up spiritual practices. And then I say, what are the spiritual practices? Meditation, or chanting, japa, etc. These are spiritual practices. And then pouring some water on a deity, or doing a parikrama, circumambulation, outside a temple, or doing namaskara and all, salutation to a deity, that becomes a religious practice. This is childish. This understanding is childish. Even that is spiritual, because it brings discipline. To bring discipline, certain forms are required. And when we ignore those forms, then the discipline goes away. And once the discipline goes away, what is there? Then we have compartmentalizing of life. So I am spiritual 3 hours in a day, and rest 21 hours I am religious, or not even that. I'm a secular person. That is all silly. I am dharmic. I follow dharma all 24 hours, including sleeping. Why? A good sleep at proper time is part of following one's dharma. Such a wide definition of dharma we have. And why do we need to uh, dif- I mean, translate it in any other way and degrade that word? No need. We follow dharma, and that following the dharma, we are try to understand what is dharma, continue understanding it, continue following the dharma, fine-tuning my life according to my dharma, and that takes me towards freedom from sorrow. Okay, that takes me towards the vision of who I am really, and that is the permanent solution of freedom from sorrow. When I know my true nature, when I'm convinced that becomes part of me. It is not a words or a lip service. It becomes just part of me, who I am. The whole orientation is changed, and I'm free from sorrow, in spite of all the things which causes sorrow. So the vision changes the whole thing. The understanding changes the whole thing. So with this, we stop here. If you have any questions, you can write to me through WhatsApp. Thank you. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.